Hey guys, before we get into the video, I want to give a huge shout out to Ayame Combo on Twitter for making this awesome commission piece for me. I recently wanted to have some art piece made for the channel, so if I wanted to have a graphic version of myself put on screen when I'm talking just behind the mic with just my voice, I thought this would be a fun little thing to have included, and I ended up reaching out to Ayame, who was doing some commissions, and made this awesome piece just made of me in like a fun little character select screen format. If you're looking for an awesome commission, be sure to reach out to Ayame Combo on Twitter. I have it on screen right here. As of right now, all of their rates are half off, and I would also like to say a big thank you to Ayame for the amazing work. It really means a ton, and thank you. And with that, let's get on to the video. If you've been following the channel for some time, you know that I'm a huge fan of the Mortal Kombat series, but if you knew me growing up throughout middle and high school, you would know two things about me. One, I was an absolute dork loser nerd, some say that I still am, and two, I am a huge fan of zombie media, including Dead Rising. To celebrate the upcoming launch of the Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster coming out in a few days, why not take a trip down memory lane and look at some of my favorite aspects of the game, that being the boss fights. We'll be ranking my top 10 psychopath bosses from this series.
Fight!
I've covered wars, you know.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening everyone. Nick here, and welcome to or welcome back to the channel. Alongside Mortal Kombat and Crash Bandicoot, Dead Rising is one of my favorite game franchises of all time. Weird trio, I know. With the upcoming Deluxe Remaster coming out in a few days, it seemed like this was a great time to cover the franchise one more time on the channel. I have many fond memories playing this on my old Xbox 360, playing Dead Rising 2 with one of my good friends growing up, never forget about those fun days, Miles, and Dead Rising 3 when I got my Xbox One, and then it came to an end when I was gifted Cole during the holiday season with Dead Rising 4. But lo and behold, we get a random announcement earlier this summer, and I completely lost it. So today we're going to be breaking down the biggest highlights from this franchise, that being the boss fights, also known as the psychopath fights. These fights are what made these games so memorable among people who played these games. Some have cool elements where others are just over-the-top characters who went nuts just to stay alive during the apocalypse, activating their fight mode over their flight mode. I'm gonna talk about my top 10 bosses based on how memorable and fun they are, their backstory, how they meet their demise, and the challenge they bring to Frank, Chuck, Nick, or Dick. Giggity. So with that, let's grab our photo cameras, plenty of duct tape, and whatever we can get our hands on and use as weapons as we look at my top 10 boss fights from the Dead Rising series. Fine dining into number 10 with our first and only boss from Dead Rising 3, that being Darlene Fleschermacher. The bosses were themed off the 7 deadly sins, her being gluttony, and she ended up making for a unique fight. Armed with a giant spork and mobility scooter, she fights to keep you away from any food to feed you during the apocalypse. Kudos to making a spork useful for once. She zooms around and can stab you multiple times. She can even eat a bunch of food and hurt you with her vomit. Gross, I know. And what's worse is you can actually get the jump on her and force feed her, causing her to take a lot of damage. After you defeat her, she'll drive at you full speed and slips on her back on some of the vomit on the floor, which is once again even more disgusting. As she falls on her back and lies there, she keeps vomiting, causing her to suffocate to death, and definitely one of the grossest ways to go out. It's a good fight, but unfortunately this can easily be cheesed because of the weapon locker system. But of all of the boss fights from this game, this one left a huge impression on me and still does to this day.
Are you calling me?
Oh shit.
You know, some people just love their jobs too much, and number 9 showcases that. Stephen Chapman, the grocery store manager from Dead Rising, really doesn't take kindly to vandalism, as seen by him capturing Isabella for some medication. That or the retail world really got to him after dealing with too many Karens needing to speak to the manager. He's armed with Frank's level 1 super from Marvel vs. Capcom 3, a shopping cart full of bladed weapons. He uses this to charge right at you and knock you on your ass, and if you decide to get the jump jump on him, literally by jumping on top of the aisles to jump and hurt him, he will shoot you down with the shotgun. Both of these methods can take a huge chunk of health out of you, so you better be careful. And after you manage to defeat him, he does go out in a pretty sad way, realizing that he's dying and he's going to be losing all of the things that he's worked for. His store, customers, food, sales, you name it. But I will admit it is really funny when he does go out, because after he lies there looking like he's dead, there is one more quick jump scare as he lies back up quickly and screams to clean up his dead body at Register 6. Steven is such a memorable character, even if the fight isn't that hard, but his personality is what makes me place him up here so high. After they showcased him in the teaser for the Deluxe Remaster, they really kept him intact, with the only addition being they made him sweatier, which is just absolutely gross. Overall, have a nice day, Steven, but I'm gonna shop somewhere else to get off your bad side.
Listen to me. And listen good, partner. I don't allow vandalism in my store!
Moving on to number 8 with the final boss before entering overtime mode, this being Raymond Sullivan from Dead Rising 2. In the story, Chuck finds out Sullivan left the safe house, plans on firebombing the Fortune City Strip, and takes all the evidence against you to clear your name. Why? Well, he's an asshole. And like one, he fights by throwing flares to have missiles fired at you while you're surrounded by zombies. So not only are you fighting a guy you could rely on who betrayed you, but you're also fighting some people who are firing missiles at you and a giant crowd of zombies. Oh, and under a place that's under construction, so good luck with that. If you get too close, he will take you down to the ground and throw whatever weapon you had on you, so you better be careful and stock up with a bunch of weapons so they don't get tossed away. After defeating him, Chuck attaches a carabiner, which was attached to his belt, and clings it to a railing. As the plane goes to pick up his parachute to get him to escape, it actually splits him in half instead, leading to one of the coolest deaths in the series and one of the coolest ways someone has been split in half in the series. Afterwards, he calls the Channel 6 News to clear his name and to get the survivors evacuated safely. A fun boss to conclude the 72-hour mode, and one my friend and I had a good time with. Like the missiles, this one's just an absolute blast.
You killed my wife, destroyed my family! Everything that we have done has been absolutely necessary!
From one final boss from 72-hour mode to another, this time with the what if story for Dead Rising 2 off the record with Stacy Foresight. Originally an ally in the base game, she's now a member of the Phoenitrans Corporation, responsible for starting the outbreak in the Las Vegas-inspired Fortune City. A fun little twist to change things up. And what else is a nice change? A final boss with a giant mech taking place at this game's amusement park, Uranus Zone. One of the only giant boss fights in the series, and it's a fun one, trying to crush you with giant claws, shoot missiles, and throw crates at you just to defeat you. What I love is how to damage her is you need to attack the mech first, and then jump into the pilot seat and you both have a fight. Similar to Sullivan, Stacy gets you pinned down to the ground after you both fall off of the mech, and while waiting there, the giant claw arm breaks as Frank Dodge rolls away and Stacy gets crushed. And similar to Chuck's ending from Dead Rising 2, Frank calls the news to clear his name and save the survivors. Overall, it is a fun fight, definitely a fun surprise I didn't expect to see from the Frank West retelling of Dead Rising 2.
There's a price for everything, Frank, and you're about to pay it.
Jumping back into some optional fight territory in Dead Rising 2, and one of my friends' favorite boss fights being Chef Antoine, the self-proclaimed king of cuisine. Antoine was supposed to meet with a food reporter to write a story about his famous dish, but a little inconvenience called a zombie apocalypse got in the way, stopping that dream from becoming a reality. Under the impression he's still on the way, Chuck Green appears and he mistakes him for being the reporter. Antoine does lose a little bit of his sanity as he does intend on feeding a actual hostage to Chuck, but Chuck is not impressed in his dish, and then next thing you know, a fight begins. Like a crazy chef, he's armed with a bunch of frying pans he'll throw at you, he'll run around the arena and heal himself by eating all of the food everywhere, throws a bunch of plates to knock you down, and sometimes will knock you to the ground, pounce you, and then will actually force feed you, to which you have to break free. Get whatever meat that's in your hand away from me. On top of it, the music that plays is super cool. Huge shout out to Cell Dwellers, My Own Little World, for playing at this segment here. It's actually one of my go-to tracks when marathon training. After defeating Chef Antoine, he slips back into the kitchen and he tries to get away from you and slips into a greaser that's on, and he burns his face until he's dead. Even though the mission is called Taste Like Chicken, he's fried like chicken. A wonderful fight that's super fun. Guess you can say Antoine got served.
Antoine will make you dinner.
Jumping back into Dead Rising Classic by looking at Cliff Hudson. This boss fight is quite the emotional roller coaster. The cutscene starts with Frank walking into a hardware store with a bunch of strung up bodies that are all decapitated. Can't show you any of these or else YouTube will put me on the naughty list. Cliff then demands Frank's name and rank, and then he immediately assumes that he's part of the Viet Cong and he wants to kill him and interrogate him. Which you can't really interrogate someone after they're dead, Cliff, but you know what, whatever. This boss fight is super interesting, as even though it takes place at a hardware store and it'd be kinda easy to peek through some of the aisles and find him, he's actually crawling around a bunch of the tiles in the floor trying to stalk and hunt you. So a lot of this is actually waiting for him to strike on you, but you don't want to wait too late or else he'll take a big chunk by stabbing you in the back with his big machete. It's a very uncomfortable game where you're constantly anxious the entire time trying to fight Cliff. After you manage to defeat him, you realize that he snaps out of it as he was reliving memories and trauma when fighting in Vietnam. It's really sad to see him slowly die and apologize after realizing what he's done. He then explains that he snapped after they took his granddaughter and he immediately went into fight mode. He ends up giving you a pair of keys to find other people that he's captured, and afterwards he slowly slips away as Frank closes his eyes out of respect. Now this fight is super scary, super creepy, super creative, and awesome. Also a big shout out for this one being voiced by Stephen Bloom, best known for Sub-Zero, Wolverine, and many other characters.
You can't tell me, can you, fella? Oh yeah, I know why. It's because you're Viet Cong. You are nothing but a filthy communist!
His voice just really sells that grizzled veteran vibe. And even though I'm really excited to redo this fight in the Deluxe Remaster, the development team altering his backstory slightly does take a little bit of the charm out of the way from this version. But overall, I still think this is one of the coolest boss fights in terms of both presentation and execution.
By the time I'm done beating information out of you, you are gonna be begging for death to come take you away.
If there's one thing that you've noticed through all of these characters so far is that we're fighting people in a very scary situation. But what if I told you one of the boss fights isn't actually a human or a zombie? It's actually a tiger instead. That's right, because number 4 is actually going to Ted the Tamer and Snowflake the Tiger. The first time you head into the Yucatan, you are met with Ted, who knocks you unconscious and brings you to a tiger cage to feed his pet tiger, Snowflake. Ted explains that all the food he had went bad and zombies are no good. After you try to explain a way around to help Snowflake, you accidentally insult the guy, he snaps, and the next thing you know, you're fighting a tiger. Ted is the easier one of the two to dispatch, as he just acts like a regular survivor just with a gun. Snowflake is the real terror here, as you're fighting inside of a casino with a bunch of corrals. You can't really tell where Snowflake is gonna come from until you're pounced to the ground. However, the cool thing is you don't have to kill Snowflake in this fight. If you go back to the cage, you can find a bunch of loose steak that you can drop on the ground for Snowflake. After you feed her enough times, she'll actually join you as a survivor, where she can actually destroy any zombie in your way. Which that is super crazy, having a giant tiger companion assist you in a zombie apocalypse. But there is something crazier than that. You can take Snowflake back to the safe house and give her as a gift to your own daughter. Yep, that's right, your own daughter that's dying from an infection. You can just give her a pet tiger as a gift. Yeah, so Father of the Year material right there.
Snowflake, go and eat your fresh meat. Nice and slow.
Don't you love what-if scenarios? Sometimes if written well, they can be super fun and a unique take on something we're familiar with, but altered either slightly or heavily. So with that, take what you will with Dead Rising Off the Record. The biggest change is you are now playing as Frank West, the protagonist from Dead Rising 1. And with Off the Record, we were actually given some new scenarios and new boss fights. One of the cool additions that they made was making the protagonist from Dead Rising 2 an actual boss fight. That's right, number 3 goes to Chuck Green. In this version of the story, you find him wandering the plaza on his bike. He looks grizzled, sad, and he's also just very intoxicated. And it turns out during the apocalypse, Katie died to the zombies, and he's still under the impression she's still alive with the doll on his back, and he's looking around for the medication to keep her alive. You honestly really feel sorry for the guy. What makes it worse is you're the reason that causes him to snap and want to fight you. You can really see how much his daughter meant to him in this fight, just in terms of emotion, which is just really sad. As you try to get him back to the safe house, you try grabbing his attention, but you grab the doll on his back and he snaps. This time around, he drives a slicycle, yes, that is what the vehicle is called, and try to run you over. He even will throw Molotov cocktails to try and burn you alive, and if you get too far away, he'll drink the whiskey and actually regain some health. Honestly cool to see what he is known for in the terrorist reality mode, using the bike to try and mow you down. Very fitting to Chuck. After you end up defeating him, he tries riding away, falls off the bike, crawls over to the doll that's broken, and then talks to the doll saying that he's safe and would never have anything terrible happen to her. Say what you want off the record, but this is honestly one of the most emotional moments in a Dead Rising game. It's super sad to watch, honestly. Seeing him risk his life just to save his daughter, even when she's gone. For those reasons, it easily lands in the top 3.
Nobody messes with my kid.
Our runner-up goes to the Dead Rising 2 Case West final boss, Commander Harjit Singh. Even though he doesn't get a lot of screen time in Case West, he actually gets a huge prominent focus in the comic series. In the comic series, he was the one that led the outbreak that destroyed Las Vegas and Still Creek, which is where Chuck Green is from and is the apocalypse responsible for killing his wife. So yes, there are a lot of stakes in this final fight for a character that doesn't get a lot of screen time. And this is definitely a very memorable boss fight for so many reasons. 1, the presentation, 2, the kick-ass music, and 3, just the boss fight overall. He fights you with dual impact hammers that punch and can throw you across the entire stage, and has a bunch of soldiers that can come in and assist him during the fight. This is also one of the first boss fights with multiple health bars, so this is going to take quite some time taking him down. Also, what makes this boss fight super fun is the fact that you have 2 of the most memorable protagonists taking him on. After defeating Harjit Singh, he tumbles into a glass tube that has a bunch of queen bees that sting him to death, going out in the way of the Wicker Man, and which is also super ironic as he was responsible for spreading queens and all of the outbreaks to dying to a bunch of them. Definitely one of the biggest highlights of the franchise and the biggest highlight to Case West. A great way to close out that chapter. Yup, many of you longtime fans probably saw this one coming a mile away, but number 1 goes to the most memorable boss fight of the entire franchise, coming from Dead Rising 1, Adam the Clown. This one is already super memorable right at the start, as he's juggling 2 chainsaws, showcasing his fun super side, and then immediately getting sad seeing what you're trying to do. He shares a sad story about how everyone used to love him, which honestly, how does anyone love clowns? And implies that the zombies took his audience and killed everyone. So he's actually keeping the ride on to keep the zombies away from him, aka stopping them from eating his audience. So as a result, he sees you as a threat and the fight is on. Adam is definitely one of the harder boss fights at the beginning of the game, as it may be one of the first psychopath bosses you encounter. As mentioned earlier, he's armed with 2 chainsaws, where if you try shooting at him, he'll deflect them, charges up giant balloons and will throw them at you, which causes you to be stunned, can moon jump around the stage to get to you from floor to floor, and can throw knives at you if you get too far away. So no matter what, he will get the jump and surprise on you from any angle or opportunity. And after you defeat him, he definitely goes out in the most disturbing way. Getting super dizzy, falling on his knees, and then accidentally falling on his chainsaws, slicing him in half. And what makes this more disturbing is that he keeps laughing the entire time, as it looks like Frank is about to vomit just witnessing it. He keeps laughing until it slowly just dies down, and as a result, you find the key card in his blood. Also, huge shoutouts to him being voiced by the same character who did the voice of the Crypt Keeper, that being John Kassir. You did an amazing job. And it's also to see that this character is still scary as hell in the Deluxe Remaster. Definitely a boss fight I'm looking forward to when it comes out in a couple of days. And with that, Adam the Clown is my favorite psychopath boss fight in all of Dead Rising.
Time stops, then the zombies come back, and
So there you have my top 10 boss fights from the Dead Rising series. I just thought this would be a fun little video to do as I'm a big fan of Dead Rising and I'm looking forward to the Deluxe Remaster. Please share below what your favorite boss fight from the series is, what makes it your favorite, and are you looking forward to the Deluxe Remaster? As you can tell, I surely am. While you're at it, let's have fun in the comments and let's try and create a fun psychopath boss fight. Share some details below, like what's their occupation and what their weapon would be, and a little bit of their backstory to make it a little fun. If you would like to see a review for Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, please let me know and drop a like. And while you're at it, just drop a like, subscribe, and share this video. Your support truly means a ton to this channel. Also, if you haven't seen it yet, my buddy Dibs actually shared a fun video that I did with him along with several content creators covering the Mortal Kombat series. I'll leave a card up here for you to check that out. And yes, in a couple of days, Chaos Reigns is coming out, so get ready for the hype train on that. I'll try to get a live stream out and I would love to do a review of the game. Stay tuned for more details there. Along with that, I'm also working on all costumes ranked for Noob Saibot with the guests coming to the channel, so be sure to stay tuned for that as well. As always, thank you so much for tuning into the video. My name is Nick, and chop until you drop.
Fight!